I'm Mark Caro, and welcome to episode 231 of Caropop. If you'd like to throw us some support and help keep this thing going, please go to caropop.com. Our guest this week is a big talent drummer with a big personality to match, Liberty DeVitto. You're most likely to know his work with Billy Joel, because DeVitto was laying down indelible parts on almost all of Joel's classic material. He came on for the 1976 album Turnstiles and continued driving the beat on The Stranger, 52nd Street, Glass Houses, The Nylon Curtain, An Innocent Man, The Bridge, Stormfront, and one song on Joel's final pop rock album, 1993's River of Dreams. As teenagers, DeVitto and Joel and their respective bands crossed paths. Years later, when Joel was seeking a New York-style drummer, DeVitto fit the bill. What made him a New York-style drummer? In part one of this lively two-part conversation, DeVitto takes us through his early days of worshiping the Beatles, playing along with records, and being influenced by three drummers in particular. He discusses how Turnstiles came together and whether they had any inkling that New York State of Mind would become a standard. He describes Joel's way of introducing songs to the band. Did he come in with demos, play them on the piano? Would they be finished, or would he still have parts to work out, perhaps with DeVitto's and the band's help? What kept Beatles producer George Martin from producing The Stranger? What was the impact of Phil Ramone coming on to produce The Stranger and the subsequent albums Up Through the Bridge? How did DeVitto wind up playing a samba beat on Just the Way You Are? For which song did Joel have to rewrite the melody after DeVitto pointed out that it sounded like Neil Sedaka's Laughter in the Rain? How did the band arrive at the jazz interludes on Zanzibar? Had DeVitto done that kind of jazz drumming before? On which song did Ramone insist DeVitto play more of a disco beat, despite the drummer's resistance? How did that work out? Which 70s Joel hit does DeVitto not like? Which other Joel song does DeVitto say is the hardest to play and be happy about it? Which one is his favorite? How much did DeVitto enjoy the Beatles-inspired album, The Nylon Curtain? What circumstances drove Joel's hit throwback album, An Innocent Man? How much were Joel and the band listening to the punk and new wave rock of the time? You'll hear many Billy Joel songs with fresh ears after this conversation. Please enjoy part one of this Caropop conversation with Liberty DeVitto. It seemed like things really clicked when you joined the band. 52nd Street is just like, there's such a diversity of work that you're doing on that record. I mean, Rosalinda's Eyes, there's so much texture and everything, and Zanzibar, you're like going rock, but then you're hitting jazz. I mean, was that always sort of your approach, and that you just sort of had like this very broad toolbox at that point?
Well, you know, Billy wrote in so many different styles. I tried to keep him in rock and roll. You know, he even says that he wrote in his classical style, but between me and Doug Stegmeyer, we kind of steered him towards the rock and roll side. Zanzibar was a freak. We didn't have the jazz part until the demo that we made of it didn't have the jazz part. And it wasn't until he had, I Got the Old Man's Car, I Got a Jazz Guitar, then it was like when Phil Ramone said, hey, you know what you can do here? Because now you're in a jazz club, you know, you can blast into jazz. And we were like, jazz? We don't play jazz, you know? And so doing that whole quick jazz thing was a challenge for us.
Had you played jazz at that point, or were you always strictly a rock drummer?
Always a rock drummer. I mean, I played weddings for 2.5 years before I got with Billy. And, you know, you had to play all different styles. You had to play ethnic music. You had to play some swing stuff. You had to play rock. You had to play everything. So I kind of knew, you know, the basic, kind of like Only Good Die Young on The Stranger is kind of like a jazz brush thing, you know. You know?
Yeah,
so,
well, and something like Just the Way You Are, I mean, did that start out with that kind of Brazilian lilt thing, or is that something you guys found?
No, we found that. It started out, it was almost like You Are the Sunshine of My Life. You know that song, Stevie Wonder? Of course. You know, it was kind of like that kind of thing. And then we got into the studio, and on the Turnstiles album, there's a song called James.
Right.
And it has that same brush in one hand, and just on the 1, 2, bass drum on the 3, you know. So I was doing that in the studio, just boom. And then I looked in the control room, and Phil Ramone started to go like this, you know. And then I went, you know, you know, and that's how that was created between me and Phil.
I knew that song again when I was a kid, and I'm like, oh, this is just, you know, this nice little ballad. And then as I got older, I went back and listened to it. I'm like, oh, this has this kind of samba feel to it almost.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm like, how did they get to that? It's really interesting. So,
yeah, well, when you grow up and don't take lessons and you don't really know what a samba is, but you feel this music and you put your own swing to it, it becomes your own thing. You know, they call that groove that I do in that the hardest simple beat to play.
There you go. Yeah. Well, you're someone who grew up on the Beatles. You're one of like the many people who, from what I've read at least, you know, saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show and was like, that, right? That's the thing. And when you grew up a Beatles fan, and you know, and were the ages that you were when the Beatles were coming around, you end up learning a lot of different styles of music anyway, because they covered just about everything.
Oh yeah, people don't realize that. P.S. I love you. It's like you know, he's playing the straight like that kind of thing, but then on No Reply, the song "It Happened Once Before," he's playing a bossa nova on it.
Right.
You know, so you're listening to Ringo, and that's how you're learning how to play, and you're listening to all these different things. And then when I played Weddings, I was like, oh, this is the same stuff that Ringo was doing on the on the Beatles songs, you know. When
you learned, were you playing along with records? Like, was that the main way you taught yourself or learned?
Yeah, records were my books. And back in the day, it was difficult because you know, there was no internet, so you couldn't go online and see a YouTube of how this song goes. It was like you had to put your record on and listen to hear what the drummer's doing. And if you couldn't quite get it, you had to put your finger on the record and slow it down because you couldn't slow the record down. You know, you had to put your finger on it. You know, and then once you finally figured it out, my thing that became my style was hearing different things that drummers were doing. But when I tried to copy it, I did it wrong, but it still felt great, and it became my own thing.
Yeah.
Just playing it wrong.
That seems like the way almost all the greats kind of get started, is that they're sort of trying to play the stuff they love, but they put their own stamp on it, whether they realize it or not. I mean, right.
You don't even realize you're doing it, but then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, you know.
You had a drum kit at your home as a kid.
Let's see, my parents bought me a drum kit when I was, I would say in the 6th grade. How old are you in 6th grade? 12?
Yeah.
Yeah, 12 years old. And, you know, it's funny because I didn't ask for the drum kit. I always loved music, but I didn't ask for the drum kit. And I asked my dad later on, I said, why did you buy me drums? He said, because they didn't make Prozac when you were a kid. So, yeah, so the drum kit was there, but I didn't really play it because I tried to join the 6th grade school band. I couldn't do the buzz roll and the Star Spangled Banner. The guy put me on the bass drum, and it was boring, you know, hit it every now and then. And I kind of was giving up, like, yeah, I guess this isn't going to happen for me. And the teacher actually said, put the sticks down, DeVitto. You'll never do anything with the drums. And then when the Beatles came on the Ed Sullivan Show, February, I was 13 years old. In August, I turned 14. I was primed for that, you know?
Yeah. And when you saw them on the Ed Sullivan Show, it was Ringo. You were like, I want to do that. It wasn't like I want to be strumming guitar or playing bass or any of that stuff.
Well, Paul impressed me the most. You know, because the thing that impressed me really a lot that made me want to do that was I'm watching the show. When the camera's on the Beatles, after a little while, they start to pan the audience, and all these girls are like standing on the chair screaming at these not that good looking guys. And then I looked at my sister and her friends, and they're screaming at a black and white TV at these not that good looking guys. And I thought, this is what I want to do. This is a great way to meet girls.
There you go. But did you try picking up other instruments, or was it always drums?
It was always drums. I know a little guitar. I can play rhythm on guitar, play chords and stuff like that. And that only happened because when my dad was home from work and he wanted to watch TV at night. I couldn't play the drums in the basement. So I got myself a guitar, and I learned how to play the guitar, learned the chords.
So then you're playing in bands like in high school and as a teenager, and you cross paths with Billy Joel when he was in the Hassles, right?
Yeah, we played in the same club called the My House. It was in Plainview, Long Island. And I was in a band called the New Rock Workshop. And the two bands were the house bands at this place called the My House. And I would see him. We'd pass in the dark. Hi, how are you? Nice to see you. That kind of thing. And I was into this band Traffic.
Right.
I loved Traffic.
Another good drummer.
And yeah, June Capaldi was great. And we do it a lot. I do it a lot. You hear a lot, like on The Stranger with the 16 notes. That's all Jim Capaldi, all that stuff. Stiletto. Very Traffic. So I'm into the song Colored Rain. And I thought, man, this is such a great song. The way Steve Winwood sings it, it's fantastic. And one night I'm watching the Hassles because both bands are playing together. And I'm watching the Hassles, and Billy all of a sudden does Colored Rain. And I was like, oh my God, this guy knows the same song I know. And I thought, wow, he's really good. But then, he went off to California and started to do his thing. And then when he was moving back to New York, he had Doug Stegmeyer playing bass with him. And Doug was in a band with me and Russell and this guy, Howard Emerson, called Topper. So on the way back, Billy tells Doug, I want to move back to New York. I want to keep you as a bass player, and I want a New York style drummer.
Right.
And Doug said, well, you already know the guy. Yes.
Did you see yourself as a New York type drummer, and what does that mean?
I knew that it meant powerful and aggressive. That kind of drummer. He wanted the power and the aggressiveness, but he also needed it to be very musical. The thing that really clinched the gig for me was when I was 18 years old. I'd gone on the road with Mitch Ryder. I don't know if you remember Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels.
I do. I had Mitch Ryder as a guest on Caropop, in fact.
Oh, you did?
It was awesome. I was like, I'm talking to Mitch Ryder.
Yeah. So I went on the road with him for like 6 months up and down the East Coast, and I was filling in for the drummer he had, which turned out to be Johnny Siomis, who was the drummer on Frampton Comes Alive. So when I said to Billy, I played with Mitch Ryder, and he went, you played with Mitch Ryder? And I said, yeah. He goes, oh, okay, that's good. That's really good, because that was very aggressive. Mitch was aggressive.
Right, absolutely. Well, and probably there was probably a sense of like the LA drummers are a little more laid back, the New York drummers are a little more muscular, and then you're a New York drummer who's influenced by some of these British drummers too, like Ringo. So it's like a great combination. Well,
my first 3 drummers kind of developed my style, the way I play. First was Ringo, very musical. Then was Dino Danelli from the Rascals.
Right.
When I saw Dino Danelli, I realized a drummer could be as much a focal point as the lead singer, because he was so, the way he played, you watched him. And then the power came from Carmine Appice.
Right. When
I saw the Vanilla Fudge for the first time, that guy scared me. I thought, oh my God, this guy is like insane. He was playing grooves and stuff like that. Nothing really complicated, but it had so much power to it. So I put them all together, and it became me. But I had to audition. There was about 5 other guys that auditioned, and Billy had these new songs that eventually became Turnstiles.
Right.
And he said, what would you play on this? What would you do on this? And he was amazed at how quick I came up with stuff and things like that. And he didn't know for 25 years that Doug had slipped me a tape of all those songs before I went in for my audition.
Well, he'd gone in and recorded it with like Elton John's band in Colorado, right?
Yes, he did. Actually, it was in CBS studios in New York, but it was
Colorado, New York, whatever.
Same thing.
Caribou. They both start with a C. I remember it was Caribou Studios or something.
Right. One's a little higher elevation than the other one. One's at sea level. But it was Dee Murray and Nigel Olsson that played with Billy. And I remember hearing James, which is on the Turnstiles album.
Sure.
Their vocals were incredible. Those guys could sing. And I remember hearing Angry Young Man. And Elton told Billy, I can't play fast. You can't play fast. So when you hear that part that goes on the hi-hat, you just hear trying to keep Billy in time when you go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Billy was not happy with it.
So, all right, so you know this guy from the Hassles, and then all of a sudden you're probably hearing Piano Man on the radio going, wait, this is that guy? Because they didn't really sound alike, particularly.
No, I wasn't crazy about the song. It was like a waltz, and 6/8 time. And
little did you know how many times you would end up playing that song.
Oh, my gosh. Everybody asks, how do you keep you up after playing songs so much? I said, Piano Man is the hardest one to play and be happy about it, Because first of all, I didn't play on the record. It's the only song in the show that I didn't play on the record. And it's quite long,
Yeah. Yeah, it goes on for a bit. So he did Piano Man album and he did Street Life Serenade, both in L.A. And then he's like, I'm coming back. But first he does this version of Turnstiles that nobody's happy with.
Nobody's happy. I remember Doug was already talking to him about getting me in the band. But he was like, I have to do this first. Columbia Records, CBS Records wants me to use Jim Guercio as a producer. And that's why they went in and recorded with Nigel and Dee. Because they just got fired from Elton's band.
So what did you think of those songs when you heard them for the first time?
The songs?
Yeah.
I thought they were really good. Angry Man was a good one. It was myself, Doug Stegmeyer, and Howard Emerson, and this other guy, Jim Smith, was playing guitar at the time. He came in, I don't know where he came from, but he was just there for like Angry Young Man. He played that rhythm part, right? Then we got Russell and Howard in the band. The four of us, Doug, myself, Russell, and Howard, were the band topper.
Right.
So we became Billy's band.
And you were used to playing together already, which helps.
We were so tight. That's why me and Doug were so tight all the time. And then Billy said, I'd like some sax on this. And Doug's brother had just did a jingle with this guy. Turns out to be Richie Canada. And then me and Doug went to a club to see Richie play. And we came back, reported to Billy, and said, this guy's really good. And Doug came to the studio. We were recording Angry Young Man at the time. And Richie was like, well, what am I supposed to do with this band? And then Billy took him in the room and said, I want you to play sax on this. And it was New York State of Mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Little did you all know that was going to become like this standard.
Oh, my God, yes.
I mean, I remember even going back and getting that album, but I was in Chicago, so it didn't mean as much to me. But like later, I was just like, oh, that's like the song you hear more than anyone else. But it wasn't what I thought of at the time as much. And Say Goodbye to Hollywood, I assume he came in and it had that kind of Phil Spector thing right from the start.
Yeah. I got to emulate Hal Blaine on that one. He plays on "Be My Baby" and all those that song. And but yeah, it was interesting because now he was leaving L.A. That's what that song was about. Coming back to New York, and that's what New York State of Mind was about. And New York State of Mind is one of the only songs where he actually sat at the piano and came up with the words and the music at the same time. Didn't take him long to write that song at all.
Did he come up with that after you guys started making the album, or was that still part of the other?
That was still part of the whole thing.
Yeah. So
some of the things he was continuing to write, like he played Summer Highland Falls for me and Doug, because when he came back, he moved up to Highland Falls, right? And he's writing about the summer there, and
right,
with Elizabeth at the time, and he just had one verse. And me and Doug said, oh, my God, that's really good. You need to finish that,
In general, like, how would he present songs to you? Would he just sit down at the piano, and would you like be behind your kit and figure it out as he was playing it, or would you listen to it? Would he make demo tapes? How did it work?
Billy, when we went into the studio, Billy might have 2 songs written, but he had a tape recorder, and he always had this thing called bits and pieces. Any ideas that he had, he would record it on his little tape recorder. And then he'd sit at the piano, and he would play those bits and pieces. And we would kind of jam on them. And then, because the rest of the band's playing, it would make him go somewhere else. And he'd realize, okay, I can go here. Now, this is starting to swing now, yeah. And then he would go home and finish it. And then the next day he'd come in, and we'd record it as a song.
So what's an example of a song like that where you sort of started jamming on just like a little bit, and then he went home and finished it, and then you're like, voila, it's a great Billy Joel song?
Well, Zanzibar was one of them, He had the bum bum no lyrics, nothing. As a matter of fact, I have a demo where he's singing, and I make a mistake in this demo, and he said. He starts singing like, oh my God, you fucked it up, you stupid ass. And then he says, oh, but then again, so did I. So, yeah, there was no jazz in it, nothing.
Wow. So, and there's this leap from Turnstiles to The Stranger. Phil Ramone comes in as the producer. First of all, when you made Turnstiles, had you played as a band together? Like, had you done live shows together before or did you just do the studios thing, then go out on the road and play for the first time together as a live band?
Me and Doug played with him at a CBS convention that was at the Hilton Hotel in New York City. It was the first time we ever played together. And we did all the songs from Piano Man and I think we may have done New York State of Mind. He had it, All
right. By the time you made The Stranger, you had a lot more experience with each other playing live and in the studio, and you had Phil Ramone, who's this great producer. So how different was making that record at that point?
Well, we were doing Just the Way You Are on the road, but it wasn't like it turned out to be on the record. Like I said, it was more like You Are the Sunshine of My Life. We had the Brenda and Eddie part of Scenes from an Italian Restaurant, just that part that we were playing live.
So you were just playing that part? That was like a song, and it was like
he would start it with
it was Scene from an Italian Restaurant. You didn't have it wasn't plural yet.
No, it was just Brenda and Eddie.
Okay.
So that was put together in the studio. The beginning and the end. Moving Out, which was created because he used to do this thing with his throat. When he cleared his throat, he would go, and so he came up with, right?
So that was like based on like a little vocal quirk with, that's funny.
Yeah, and then I went to his apartment, and he said, "I'm going to play this song we're going to record." And he played me Moving Out, but it went, Anthony works in a grocery store, playing his dinner for Sunday. And I said, Schmuck, that's Laughter in the Rain by Neil Sedaka. You're singing that melody. Oh, man. And he goes, the lyric is too good. I'm not changing the lyric. I'll rewrite the melody. And he wrote Moving Out.
And he came up with a good one, so.
Came up with a good one. And what he wanted in the beginning was for me to play and Phil Ramone. This is like the first song that we did for The Stranger. Phil Ramone walked to the front of the drums and just looked at me and went, no. He said, that's all people want to hear. They don't want to hear anything fancy. They just want to hear,
Yeah. How were you in taking direction at that point?
Great. That was great. It was only one time I had an argument with Phil, was on a 52nd Street album when we did My Life, and I had to play a straight bass drum. Now, don't forget, like, the thing that kept The Stranger out of #1 in the charts was Saturday Night Fever. So disco was still happening, strong. So Phil wanted me to play the straight 4 on on the bass drum. And I said, I'm not playing that. I'm not playing straight 4 shit. I'm not doing it.
So you wanted more of a disco beat on My Life.
Yeah, kind of like just that bass drum that continues through. Yeah.
Okay.
So he took whatever he had in his hand, he threw it down on the board, and he said, you've been in this business for what now? 20 minutes, and you're going to tell me what you don't want to play? Get out there and play that. And every time I go past the little gold single that's on the wall, I think, okay, he was right. You know?
So My Life, you lost that argument, and that's the version that came on it.
Yeah, I lost that argument. And I still don't like that song.
Do you not like that song because of the beat on it, or because of the...
That's crazy about that song. I just don't like it.
I always thought there was just sort of a kind of an irony, and everyone singing along together. This is my life. It's such a self-centered song, basically. And but it's like this community, because I remember seeing him play it like at Wrigley Field, and everyone's like sort of holding hands, singing along to this sort of narcissistic song. But it's very catchy, though. It
is catchy. It was so catchy. Do you have children?
I do.
Yeah. Well, when my girls became like young teenagers, and I would tell them to do something. Yeah, and I would tell them to do something. They'd always turn to me and go, "I don't care what you say anymore. This is my life.
Oh my God!
Take your own life and leave me alone."
That's so funny. What difference did Phil Ramone make on those records? I mean, it sounds like he was pretty active, and certainly the sound of it changed from Turnstiles to The Stranger.
Oh yeah, he taught us how to play in the studio. You know, after he saw us play live at Carnegie Hall, and I think that is out now. You can buy.
I got it as a record store day release. It's very good.
Well, he wanted us to play. You know, Billy's band to play, because George Martin turned us down. Wanted to produce Billy, but he wanted to use studio guys, and Billy said, "Love me, love my band."
Right.
You know, so Phil wanted us to. He said, "I want you to be the animals that you were on stage, but I'm going to calm you down just a little bit." You know. So after we recorded the Stranger album, the same road crew that we used on Turnstiles came out with us too, and they said, "Your album is great. It sounds like somebody tied your nuts to the drum stool so you couldn't play." But he taught us how to play in the studio. That's what he did.
When the album was done, did you think, oh, this is going to be a big success?
No. You don't think that when you listen back to stuff. You think, well, it's really good, but who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
You know, and then there was a time when The Stranger was out, and I forget what Bruce Springsteen album was out at the same time. And,
it would have been Darkness at the Edge of Town.
Okay. Well, CBS, you know, Bruce and Billy were on the same label. CBS had to decide which album they were going to really promote and shove into the public's mouth, you know. And they picked The Stranger. And Steve Van Zandt told me, we were really disappointed in that.
There's certainly room for both of them, but...
oh, yeah. But when they got a budget, they got money, they're going to put it into...
Exactly.
Yeah.
You guys ended up on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, doing Only the Good Die Young. And what else did we do? Just Where You Are.
Yeah. Was that fun, by the way?
That was a lot of fun. We were about to do... I don't know, what did we do first? Only the Good Die Young?
I think you did Only the Good Die Young first, because it was right when that record had come out, and I didn't have it yet, and I was like, oh, he rocks too. The only things I knew from him were Just the Way You Are and Piano Man, so I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah. And then I was like, oh no, okay.
Well,
that's when I went out and got the album.
On Saturday Night Live, he was told, no, don't do Only the Good Die Young, because like that song eventually became banned by the Catholic diocese, or something like that. So we did it, but like I would say a minute before it was ready to air, you know, because it's live, his piano went out, and he was like,
"What?
I don't have the piano. I don't have the piano. I don't have the piano." You know, and right before that, John Belushi came up to him and goes, "Listen, don't be nervous, but if you blow it in front of 50 million people." They walked away. Yeah. But it worked out. We had Hiram Bullock. I think it was Hiram and Steve Kahn. Steve was playing guitar. And I think it was Steve Jordan and maybe you were cracking, popping in the back there. And it's funny, Just the Way You Are almost didn't make it on the album, because it was kind of like, that's not us. That's not us. But then Phoebe Snow and Linda Ronstadt came in the studio, and we played it for them, and they went, if you guys put this on your record, you'll get more girls than you know what to do with. We're right on the record.
You're finally living out the dream from, that Beatles Ed Sullivan appearance.
Yes,
It was you. You were the Ringo now.
I was it. That was it. I've been called the American Ringo a lot in reviews and stuff like that. Because of the creativeness of in songs with songwriter drummers.
Well, that makes total sense because you do so much stuff, and you and Ringo both do it in a way that you don't draw attention to yourself. It fits the song, and then later if you go back, you're like, oh, the drumming on that is really cool, but you don't necessarily listen to Big Shot. You're doing a lot of different stuff on it too.
Right.
It all kind of goes together, so you're hearing the song Big Shot, and later if you start breaking it down, you're like, oh, they're these really interesting roles and stuff going on here.
Yeah, I noticed that with a lot of pop songs. I have to learn them sometimes when I play. In July, I have to play with a couple of guys that have played with Bowie and played with Robert Palmer and played on Higher Love with Steve Winwood. And when they say, do you know this song, Higher Love? And you go, oh, yeah, I do. I know that song. And then when you listen to it, you realize I really don't know that song because there's so much going on in it that just, goes past you because you're just listening to the whole song. But when you isolate the drums, you go oh my God, I didn't know he played that there.
When you all went back to do 52nd Street, did you have a lot more sort of confidence going in for that one? We've just had this big hit. Or did you also feel pressure about we got to live up to these surprising performance of The Stranger?
Well, I think that because we were a bunch of friends, coming from the Topper band, we were friends for years. I know Russell when he came to my house for the first time when he was 15 years old, and we hung out, we played music together, and Doug just followed along with Russell. And so we were friends for a long time. Billy was the new guy,
right?
But we hit it off really well because where we came from, Syosset, Plainview, Seaford, and Hicksville are all in this little area all together. So we could say things and you would know what we're talking about. Talk about Long Island Railroad, the stops on Long Island Railroad, talk about Jones Beach, talk about all this stuff that we did up to that point, and we all did the same thing. So it was locked in with our personalities and our the way we were raised.
So if there was any added pressure, it would have been more on Billy to deliver the songs. You guys were pretty confident you could deliver whatever he wanted from the songs once he came in with them. Yeah,
it was so what do you got, Bill? I got this idea. Okay, let's build on it. Let's do something with it. I mean, Stranger, 52nd Street, Glass Houses, he was shitting the songs out. Like unbelievable. It wasn't until a bridge that he hit a wall.
When you're preparing the songs for 52nd Street or talking about leaving off Just the Way You Are, going into any of these albums, were there extra songs that, Billy had that just you didn't use or that sort of didn't make it to the full realization thing? Or were there more songs or the ones that came out, are they the ones that, they flowered?
After Bruce Springsteen dies, they'll be able to put out albums for another 10 years.
He just put out 7 albums that had never come out or something like that.
Right. Billy, what you hear on those records is what you get. That's all he writes.
So if you'd left off Just the Way You Are, it would have been a really short record.
Oh, it would have been. There would have been something to replace it. On the bridge, not the bridge, the Nylon Curtain album, we did a song called Elvis Presley Boulevard. Didn't make it on the album, didn't kind of fit, but it became a flip side of another.
There you go. Yeah, you get your little B-sides in there.
Yeah.
And he was obviously being really prolific. You're doing an album a year. You have 52nd Street, then you got Glass Houses right after that.
Yeah.
Were there any of the songs that when he brought him in, did you think, either as a drummer or just as a fan of the music, did you get very excited?
I would say the Nylon Curtain album was very exciting because that was our tip of the hat to the Beatles.
Right.
And my favorite song out of all the Billy songs, one of my favorite songs is Laura, that's on that album.
Uh-huh.
And to me, when we're playing it and the guitar solo comes up, I think to myself, is that the Beatles or is that us? We copied the Beatles so to a T on that tune. As a matter of fact, that album was such a tip of the hat to the Beatles that Julian Lennon, when he was looking for somebody to produce his album, hired Phil because of Nylon Curtain.
I remember that Phil Ramone did that Velat album.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Nylon Curtain was, that was probably the last one that I bought like the day it came out. I really like that record, and I like how ambitious that record is. I feel like that was the last, if I can say this, maybe the last really artistically ambitious album he made.
Do you know how many people say that? That was the last album that they started to fall away from Billy after that. What came next? Innocent Man. Innocent Man.
Which is charming, but it's like sort of his get back, right? It's like it's a throwback record. They're very catchy songs, but it's not as much of an album record as like a bunch of, catchy singles.
Right. And the fact that Nylon Curtain starts with the song Allentown and then at the end goes back into it musically, goes back into Allentown, it was a whole thing,
right.
know.
Pressure was a hit. Allentown was a hit. It wasn't like this monster kind of record like, maybe the previous three had been. Was there any sense of, was that considered a disappointment, or were you guys all like, hey, this is just a great record?
We thought it was a great record. We knew that when the press liked it, we were dead. As soon as they like it, we're dead. The other albums they didn't like, they always banned everything that we did. Billy is just he's a, whatever singer kind of songwriter kind of thing. But Nylon Curtain was so good that they loved it. Like Rolling Stone loved it. But, it's funny. That was the album that we found out that Billy was getting screwed by his management company. He had just switched over. Elizabeth left. And her brother took over the management.
Right.
And me and Doug were getting a certain percentage of the record, But the way it was stated in our contracts were we got paid from record one. As soon as it sold one record, we started getting paid. Billy had to pay back the record company. You got to pay for the studio. You got to pay for anything that happens. So by the time the lawyers looked at what was going on, because when they looked at the albums, they said, like, you sold more albums than Paul McCartney did, but you can't even shine his shoes. You got nothing, And they looked at Nylon Curtain and they said, your band's making more money than you are at Nylon Curtain, So that was a big boom, like, holy cow, this is like serious shit.
So do you think that affected him artistically?
No, I think, well, he went away after that, like he went to the islands. I don't know where he went, St. Mark's or St. Bart's, something like that. And that's where he was sitting around a piano bar and was playing music. And the Sports Illustrated bathing suit shoot was going on at the same time.
There you go.
So he was in the bar.
I know it's coming.
Yeah. Here comes Elle Macpherson. Here comes Whitney Houston. Here comes Christy Brinkley. They're all singing around them. Christy Brinkley didn't even know who Billy Joel was. Whitney Houston's like, oh, I'm a singer too. I can sing. It's just singing along with him.
Wow.
All that kind of stuff. When he started dating Elle Macpherson first. That really gave him the energy for now Innocent Man. And then when he met Christy Brinkley and their relationship got serious, that's when you could hear the songs. I mean, it's like, come on.
I mean, I knew about Christy Brinkley, but the Elle Macpherson and then Whitney Houston is kind of a little side character. Did not know about that part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, because Innocent Man was pretty quick after Nylon Curtain, as I recall. I think it was like the next year.
Innocent Man was quick after Nylon Curtain, and it was done really quick. I mean, the basic tracks, I think, was 6 weeks, and we were done.
Was that fun for you? I mean, did it feel like you were sort of playing the kind of stuff you grew up loving?
Well, what we did was I had a stack of 45s, and I would bring them in, and we would play the songs that we were emulating, like Up on the Roof or something like that by the Drifters, and then we'd do Innocent Man, stuff like that. Four Seasons.
Your Fours and Seasons. I was going to say your Four Seasons out there.
Uptown Girl,
your Motown.
Yeah. All that stuff. So we listen and then go, let's do songs like this. Come on. Much more fun.
So in general, the band at that point, you're pretty happy band?
Yeah, we're a very happy band. We're all in the studio. Now we have David Brown playing with us. He came in at the end of the sessions for 52nd Street. So he was there he just played the solo on Big Shot. And then so he was there for Glass Houses, Nylon Curtain, and now Innocent Man. So me, Russell, Doug, and Billy.
Were there any of those songs that he was bringing in, aside from My Life, that you're just like, I don't really like this one?
Yeah, I'm not crazy about to song Christy Lee, which is on Innocent Man record. It's like it's
one of the songs that wasn't one of the 7 singles.
No.
So
no. But what was on there? Tell Her About It was a good one.
Yeah.
I liked what I played on like Careless Talk. I like it. It's kind of like when it gets to the bridge, it's like a Burt Bacharach tune. And Leave a Tender Moment Alone is like that too.
Right.
It's like a Burt Bacharach song.
How much were you all listening to what was coming out at the time? Punk and new wave were, like late 70s, early 80s. So Innocent Man is now, 83? Is that right?
Well, we did our punk thing on the Nylon Glass Houses. Yeah. Like Lena, Sleep with the Television On.
Yeah. Even sometimes the Fantasy has that very spare sound to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was because I think we were being forced into doing that to stay up there. Like when the Beatles did Sgt. Pepper, the Rolling Stones had to do that Her Majesty's Satanic Request. You have to follow suit for a while. But the great thing about Innocent Man is when Billy came out with when we did Tell Her About It, then Phil Collins came out with doing You Can't Hurry Love.
Right.
A lot of that same beat was being used again.
That's all for episode 231 of Caropop. Thanks so much to Liberty DeVitto for taking us into his stellar work on those classic Billy Joel songs. Next week, he returns for part 2 to describe that final run of Joel albums, his studio work with Karen Carpenter and Paul McCartney, his split from Joel, and his contributions to that 2-part Billy Joel HBO documentary, And So It Goes. You can learn more about DeVitto at libertydevitto.com, where you could order his memoir, Liberty: Life, Billy, and the Pursuit of Happiness. Also available is his Christmas story, Love, Santa Claus. If you're a drummer looking for a cool kit, go to libertydrums.com. Learn more about DeVitto's band, the Slim Kings, and their 2025 album, Super Love, at slimkings.com. That band is playing a free show at New York's Riverside Park on July 18th. DeVitto maintains a lively, opinionated public page on Facebook. You know where to find Billy Joel's music. Caropop is produced by Chris Wake, who does some of his best work under pressure. Thanks to all who support Caropop. If you'd like to throw something into the Caropop kitty, we'd be much appreciative, and I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Please go to caropop.com. Thanks so much for listening and being here. I'm Mark Caro. Please follow Caropop on the so-called socials at Caropopcast, and you can follow me as well at Mark Caro at MarkCaro. Please share this episode, subscribe here and on YouTube, tell your friends, and return next week for part 2 of this excellent Liberty DeVitto Caropop conversation. Thanks.